titles, she refused. "I would rather walk into the forest and be forgotten than wear a crown beside you." It was the last time she was seen in the palace. What followed was swift and shadowed. Gorboduca, now popular and feared, accused the king of weakness, of dishonoring warriors and appeasing rival chiefs. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs became chants. Loyalists turned their eyes. Then, rival chiefs, one dark morning, whispers with half the royal guards loyal to him, became chants. Gorboduca walked into the palace with no invitation. Then he climbed the royal platform and proclaimed, "Iluage needs a spine of steel, not a heart of clay." The royal seat changed hands that very day. King Alayezin vanished into the wind. The drums that beat for new kings were silent that day. Gorboduca wore the crown. King Alayezin vanished into the wind. The drums that beat, and so began the reign of Oba Gorboduca. He was no ceremonial monarch. He restructured the council, exiled old advisors, and replaced spiritual leaders with flatterers. Sacred groves were renamed. Ancestral shrines were forgotten. Where once festivals sang, now processions of armor stomped. He ruled not from tradition, but through presence. Statues of himself, taller than houses, were built in village squares. Decrees were nailed to iroko trees. Markets taxed beyond reason. Dissent became rare and brief. Songs turned to silence to caution. Even the sky grew quieter. Some whispered that Sango himself, the bearer of lightning, had turned his gaze from the city. The crown rested uneasily upon Gorboduca's head. In the early days of his rule, the city of Iluage sat in an uneasy calm, like a calabash of still water over glowing coals. Gorboduca built gates around the palace higher than any had seen. He summoned builders from distant towns to forge him a throne carved not from wood, but from black ironstone dragged from the belly of the earth. Daily, rarely speaking, just watching. Messengers brought daily flattery. Artisans were forced to mold his face into golden masks. The people dared not protest. Children were told to sing his name their first word. But even as his power stretched across the land like a giant's shadow, something began to shift. The rains began to miss their season. Cattle refused to produce young. Breadfruit trees bore sour fruit. And in the night, women spoke of strange dreams, of someone walking the palace halls barefoot, holding a flute that never made a sound. Even felt it. He began to hear songs from nowhere. First, soft as wind, then clearer, notes from a flute he thought long forgotten. Adegoke's flute. He would awake drenched in sweat, grabbing for a sword, searching his chambers, screaming at guards who found nothing. And far from the palace, in the hills of Aye, hidden beneath the sacred stones of the Amoke, was preparing. She had not vanished. She had run. Disguised as a basket weaver's daughter, she escaped the city and climbed into the cave of Ayelala, goddess of justice and forgotten truths. There she knelt not for vengeance, but for truth to rise. She brought offerings, her voice, which is Adegoke's passing, a sing once given to her by, and a bowl of river water gathered under a eye. She whispered her vow, "Let justice wear my feet. Let it walk again. Let me be the hand that steadies the gourd." Ayelala answered, not in words but in signs. That very night, the iroko tree outside Gorboduca's palace shed all its leaves. The next morning, the palace walls cracked along a line shaped like a serpent. No one dared speak, but the old ones knew. Balance was restored. Gorboduca's unease turned to unrest. He doubled the guards. He destroyed the city. He declared the name, a forbidden word. But silence only grew heavier. His sleep was haunted by visions, crowds without faces, women weeping blood, a river running backward. One dream, his throat. In another, the iroko tree bled sap that formed into Olanmuke's eyes. He summoned Last Babalawo Omutai landed on his back, and his voice, raspy as wind through gongs, said only this: "A crown taken without blessing must answer to the roots of the land. The tree you must resist." Uka had him sent away. No one ever saw the old man again. Then came the day of the new moon, the sacred time when the living. Traditionally, the king would pour palm wine to the earth, shrine, and hear the voices of the elder. But Gbodoka refused. He locked himself in his chamber and spoke to the walls. Silence. Someone knocked on the palace gates. A traveler, a woman, veiled, graceful. She claimed she brought a gift, a flute carved from, said to bring loyal heart that heard its melody. Gbodoka, suspicious, demanded she play it, and when she lifted it to her lips and let it sing, the palace fell still. The note was the one Adegoke used to play, the very first tune. Gbodoka stood. He walked forward. With one veil from the woman's face was Olajumoke. Her eyes were steady, her voice. She said nothing except one word. The ground remained. Gbodoka turned to speak, but his voice faltered. His tongue fell, his breath came short. Then came a second voice, older, deeper, not of this world, the voice of Ayelala. All things return. As the earth turns the balance, let the drum of truth. The Iroko burst into a glow. The flute in his hand disintegrated into ash. The floor beneath the throne cracked. He fell to his knees. Guards rushed in, but their feet would not move. The shadows in the palace seemed to stretch, holding them in place. He knelt beside cruelty. In peace, your crown. Wore it for a time meant only to reveal it should never become. Gbodoka lowered his head again. That night he was escorted from the palace, not but by fate. Walked barefoot gates into the forest of Aponle, where no bird sings and no man range. Some say he dissolved the Iroko tree. Others say he became part of the land, a lesson woven into the roots of the earth. Olajumoke did not seek the throne. She returned to the hills and built a small house by the river. Those who passed her home said they always left with lighter hearts, the city of Egypt, but to something better. The people remembered. They taught the tale of Gbodoka not with fear, but with wisdom. That strength without humility breeds shadows worn with pride alone, soon taken by silence, and that no matter how long it hides, truth always returns. The day Oba Gbodoka walked into the forest was the last. Peace returned, yes. Longer, the innocent had once lived in the laughter of and the rhythm of rain on rooftop. No. This was a piece of caution, memory, of quiet respect for the earth and its unseen watchers. The people of Ilu did not rebuild. Instead, they planted a garden wood, a circle of sunflowers and surrounded by calabashes filled. In the center stood a wooden flute carved from the branch of the Iroko tree, tied with a single white thread.